Hey guys, I just wanted to preview the NBA Finals since I find it quite interesting that for only the second time in NBA history, an 8 seed has made it. And this is actually even more unprecedented history. This is the first time that an 8 seed has made it in an 82 game season. Because you all may remember if you were alive back in 1999. Well, you may not even remember if you were alive, but say that maybe you're about 30 years old today or older. You may remember when the New York Knicks made their run all the way to the finals and lost to my San Antonio Spurs in a gentleman's sweep in the finals. It's honestly a very similar story because the Knicks were a very determined team after they had lost the previous year, had been eliminated by Miami, ironically. And of course, this was back in '99 before they became super relevant like they are now. And not that all of a sudden they're a lot better than they have been for most of their existence or whatever, but especially under Eric Spoelstra, this is probably some of the best years that this team has seen. The last 15 years under guys like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and of course now you have Jimmy Butler who's kind of running the whole show. Now that's really the biggest headline I think I can say that there is about this whole finals. And that's another thing. I didn't even mention the other team, which this is their first ever appearance. So they also made history for their own franchise. But here I am talking about Miami, the Miami Heat, and Jimmy Butler, because to me that's just super captivating. Because if you guys don't remember, probably about a month and a half ago, I made my NBA playoff predictions. And I actually said that Miami would not win more than a single game against Milwaukee in that first series. And that's why I think I'm taking a lot of time right now to talk about them, because I overlooked something super major. Is that this team was just in it last year. This was a very dangerous team, and yet I didn't even entertain the thought. And the reason I didn't is because we figured Milwaukee, of course, they're the one seed, not only the one seed in the East, but they have the best record in the league. They have Giannis Antetokounmpo. They have Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. I mean, they've just got a roster that you would imagine would have no chance of losing in the first round, especially going up against an 8 seed. And I know that we're judging solely based on them being an 8 seed. But clearly that has shown to be a reason not to pick someone, because very similarly enough, in the NHL, the same thing happened. And it was also a team from Florida called the Panthers. And I thought about previewing that too because of the historical precedents, but there's actually been an 8 seed that's won in the NHL. There is not in the NBA. But this is the second time that one has gotten as far as the NBA Finals. And I think that, and like I said, the very first time that it's happened in a full season. Because you have to remember, for those of you who are alive and watched the 1999 season, you remember it was only a 66-game season and not an 82 game because of the strike. So the Knicks didn't really, I'm not saying the Knicks had it easier than the Heat necessarily. But what I am saying is that, yeah, and the Knicks maybe not necessarily had it easier than the Heat did this year, but I do think that it's significantly easier when you play 16 less games. You've got to think that's about a decent fraction of your entire season that you didn't have to play, probably 1/6, I'd say, of your entire season. But yeah, Miami, they essentially should have probably played themselves out, in all honesty. But I think it helped that they got Milwaukee and not Toronto, because ironically, here I am speaking about Toronto. I actually played a simulator, or I ran a simulator, because I always do that for these crazy basketball tournaments. It actually had predicted that Toronto would go to the NBA Finals and beat Denver in 6 games. So if that happens in these finals, then I would have been pretty damn close to having a simulator had made me some money. But unfortunately, I'm not going to bet based on a simulator. But hey, maybe when it comes to professional sports, I should trust its word a little bit more, because clearly it seems to have been right about something. Okay, but enough of me going on rambles and everything. Very unprecedented and very impressive what Miami did. Because a major thing I wanted to bring up before I got into the meat of this is that I actually figured after Miami beat Milwaukee they would make the finals. Not that that means anything, because, hey, it's not anything special that I predicted that after the first round of the playoffs. It's like, I mean, okay, it's a no-brainer. Miami is just as good as anyone else at that point. It would have been more impressive if I picked them to beat Milwaukee, but again, I didn't have the confidence to choose that, so I have to eat my own words for that. And I also re-simulated too, and it had Cleveland winning it all rather than Toronto or the 8 seed or whatever. The thing is, if I had just kept it as the 8 seed, I would have the NBA Finals correct right now on my ESPN bracket. But enough of that being said, but I definitely see them being a force to reckon with in the finals here with Denver. Just because of how well that this guy goes off, Jimmy Butler. I'm playing clips of him right now in the playoffs, and good lord, this dude has single-handedly made rosters because he's just that good. You know, you can almost argue that if he were to win some championships, he could be LeBron, Michael Jordan level, but he's definitely not there because he hasn't even won a title. He has a chance to this year, had a chance to 3 years ago. But obviously until he wins anything, he's not in the conversation for any of that. But that could very well change, and not only could that change, but they would make history as the first 8 seed ever win the NBA Finals. But who more fitting than the Miami Heat to do so? I really can't argue that there's a more fitting team than the Miami Heat to do this. But enough of Miami being said. I personally think that first off, like I said, before I keep going, I want to apologize to all the Miami fans out there, and very similarly to UConn and the NCAA, because I told all of you that if UConn made the Elite Eight, that I would apologize. Well, I pretty much got to do the same thing for Miami as well. I'm sorry that I didn't take you guys seriously, and I just kind of wrote you off as not the same team as 2020. I mean, you're not the same team, but you're still very talented and well coached. That gives you a chance in any series that you play in, obviously. Now, you almost blew a 3-0 lead against Boston, but the point is you didn't. You made it to the finals, and you beat everyone's expectations, so congratulations. I expect you guys to show up, play well. Although, there's an unfortunately, this is where I think the buck stops for you guys. That was a pun, by the way. And I'm going to tell you guys why. Frankly, guys, it's that guy right there who just made that crazy assist. Yeah, it's Nikola Jokic. This guy is going to be the sole reason why Denver is just going to be unstoppable. Now, I'm not saying that they're just going to cruise through this whole series. They're definitely going to pose a threat to Miami. Well, no doubt. Like I keep saying, Miami is really the Cinderella story here. The team that wasn't supposed to have any chance of making it through the first round, let alone all the way to the NBA Finals. As I said, the only team in an 82-game season to make it. I keep shining too much light on Miami because this has been a very, very underrated team the Denver Nuggets have. They have been capable of winning it since the middle of this season. And the experts that have said this are now looking pretty smart and looking pretty expert because they believed in the abilities of this basketball team. They don't play a whole lot of defense, but you know they're talented. They're big and they're talented. For one, Jokic himself, he can command an entire offense. He doesn't always have to be the most efficient player, but he can definitely be when it requires him to. So being as unathletic as Nikola Jokic is, he's still very, very talented and skilled at basketball. And he's also very intelligent too. Basketball IQ, not necessarily intelligent in any other way, but at least basketball. I'm not saying the guy is or isn't intelligent. But you know what? It's been a pleasure getting to watch this guy through these playoffs. And late in the season when the Nuggets were trying to remain number one, because that's the thing. The West had so much parity. I think that's why everybody deep down is surprised that the Nuggets made it as far as they did. Because the West just had so much parity, you would have figured that anybody could have came out of that conference. Everybody was thinking it was pretty easily going to be Milwaukee or Boston out of the East. But like I said, the Miami Heat kind of put a wrench in those plans. And that's just why sometimes you can't exactly make predictions based on what you think of a team or what you've seen all season, because the playoffs are a different animal. Now, yes, Giannis Antetokounmpo got injured in the middle of that series against Miami, but I still don't think that's an excuse to get pretty much swept by them, though. And that was maybe more excusable, but the way that they lost this year was totally inexcusable. So my thought is, and Miami still deserves credit. That's the whole point. There is no excuse here. Miami deserves credit. Give them credit. But the whole point is, it's like the Bucks and the Celtics were kind of disappointing in ways. I'm not really disappointed in Boston per se, because I mean they made it about as far as they should have. They won the series that they were supposed to. I mean, you would think Miami too, but I'm not going to say that, because they beat Miami in heartbreaking fashion last year and upset them and knocked them out of the playoffs. Miami was on a mission. I'm like, at this point, if you're counting this team out, you really need to watch some film and learn about basketball, you know? Because if you think that a team like Miami, who's fueled and driven and probably has one of the best players in the entire conference in Jimmy Butler, you're going to be wrong every time that you think a guy like Jimmy Butler should be counted out just because he plays on a lackluster team. I mean, Miami really isn't even a lackluster team. They were kind of like the Phoenix Suns. They're a really good team, but they had a lackluster season. They did just enough to get to the playoffs, but gosh darn, when they get to the playoffs, they are not a team to be messed around with or to be counted out. And these playoffs have helped me learn that. But with that being said, like I said, Joker is such a threat because of all the stuff he has the ability to do. He's a big dude. He's sneaky, and, you know, he's got a bunch of really good players around him. And I'll say that, yeah, Butler has somewhat of a supporting cast too, but not quite like the Denver Nuggets. I do think Miami has the edge in coaching and the coaching staff, but I do not think that on the court they have the edge. But I do believe that there are some factors here that are going to keep Miami in this series, such as, like I said, they have talent such as Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. They've got old guys like Kevin Love who still show up and play every night. They have a heck of a coaching staff, so they're going to have those guys ready to play even if they're at a disadvantage, especially tonight because they're going to Denver. So not only is there an advantage as in Denver's more talented, but there's an altitude disadvantage too for Miami. But one thing I do know is these guys are not going to get clobbered, or if they do, they're not going to come back in game 2 and the same thing happen. Although I will say, I think there's a very good chance that Denver takes a 2-0 lead, because it's been hard for anybody to win at Denver. It had to be in the first series of the playoffs when they played the Timberwolves. I think it was game 5. The Timberwolves were facing elimination, and they about stole a win in Denver, but Denver was able to close the game out so they could continue to go on this roll like they have. And here they are in the NBA Finals, which we knew. I think a lot of us knew that they had the talent, and they had the coaching, and they had all of the tangibles to make it to the NBA Finals. We just didn't know if they were going to be the same old Nuggets. And the answer we got is no. My thought is, just because of that alone and the advantages that they have over Miami, I really like this team to win this series. Now, as I said, I don't think Miami is any pushover by any means. So even if Denver goes up 2-0, I at least think in game 3 or 4 that Miami is going to take one of those games. Now, yes, I am predicting a 3-1 deficit for Miami, but I think in the face of elimination, Miami's going to steal a win at Denver in Game 5. That will be the Nuggets' only home loss in the playoffs this season. because I'm not sure if a team has ever went undefeated at home in the playoffs or not. Whether there has or there hasn't, I still think Miami is good enough to go on the road and steal one in Denver. Heck, they've done it in every series so far. So I don't see it being any different here, but I do not think that they will be on it as early. Because this Denver team, or what they've shown all of us and myself, is that this team is they have came to play. They're not happy to be here or anything. This team is here to play. And Miami certainly isn't either, because if you've looked at who they've had to beat to get where they're at, no. They have not had it very easy. They certainly aren't going to just lay down and take it either. But Denver, this has been a very, very underrated team, and I expect them to show up and really bring the house for this series. But as I said, even though you would think, based on Miami being the 8th seed and kind of maybe being one of the weaker teams in this entire thing, or what was viewed as one of the weaker teams, you would think it's just an easy sweep. But that is not the case because of what we've seen from Miami, how they've showed up, how they've rallied together to get all the way here. By having 56-point nights, I'm pretty sure that performances like that are at least going to give Miami 1, if not 2 wins. And that's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting that Miami will win 2 games. And they will win Game 5 in Denver. But I think that Miami will, or not Miami. I'm rooting for them, but I don't think they'll probably win it. But in a way, I also am kind of rooting for Denver because, they've never won. But yet, as I said, I'm a Spurs fan. I'm not really a big fan of the West. So, yeah, I'm probably going to root for Miami. And my thought is Miami's definitely capable of winning. But to me, Denver, they just have too much. They're too big. They're ultimately too athletic. And I think that having the altitude advantage, playing in Denver for the majority of the series is going to wear on Miami, and I don't think they'll have enough in the tank to win. But like I said, they're going to fight, and I think we get 2 wins out of this Miami team, just like we did in 2020 when they played the Lakers. But it won't be enough. Like Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, and the rest, and this Denver Nuggets team to win their first NBA championship. Also, guys, you are probably not going to see this for a couple of days, so Game 1 and 2 might have already been played by the time that you see this, but it's coming out very soon.